Let's paint the picture. Imagine you're a junior in high school. You show up to class, take some notes, turn in your homework, and dip. You pretty much do this every single day, and fundamentally, you're just a normal person. Like me, like the next guy or girl. Life is good. Then senior year rolls around, and you realize that you need recommendation letters. Letters, multiple of them. So you go running back to the same junior year teachers, trying to ask them, hey, Mrs., can I get a recommendation letter? And their response to you is,
what was your name again?
Now we can pray to God that doesn't happen, and let's be a little bit realistic here. They might remember who you are, but that doesn't mean that they remember what you did or that you stood out in their class. You still don't have good rec letters. If there was literally one non-academic thing that I was good at in high school, it is this video exactly. I really try to strike a delicate balance between giving my inputs and trying not to come off as some ridiculously arrogant student, but even if some of the things I say in this video challenge some of your core beliefs, hear me out because I have perfected this formula for years. It has helped me tremendously in getting some of the best rec letters that I've seen students receive, period. Let's start with the basics of rec letters. The overwhelming majority of competitive college applications have at least 3 recommendation letters. These rec letters will come from 1, your counselor, and then 2 different teachers. Now the next question, Pratik, what teachers do I pick for my rec letters? For STEM students, you're going to want to have at least 1 STEM teacher. This is pretty much mandatory, so either math or science, and then try to have 1 non-STEM teacher. An English teacher is usually great, a history teacher, maybe someone you knew through a club. They can speak on some of your other characteristics. For students interested in other fields, use a similar formula where you take 1 teacher from the field that you're interested in, right? Whether that's art or social sciences, and then 1 teacher from a different field. Another really common question that comes up is, are rec letters actually important for college admissions? The answer to that is yes, but it does slightly vary from school to school. Some schools really do prioritize rec letters, they want to see strong rec letters. Other schools don't care as much. However, what is somewhat universal among schools is the fact that a bad rec letter does not look good, and that's just a fact. If your teacher is not even willing to take the time to give you anything more than a default recommendation letter that could have also been submitted for 100 other students, it really goes to show the fact that they don't really care about you as a student. If you truly had the kind of meaningful impact that you want to have had in a class for a teacher to give you a good rec letter, they would have at least taken the time to swap out your name rather than just using a general adjective like, oh,
the student was smart. The student worked hard in my class.
Fundamentally, the point of a recommendation letter is to give colleges an additional perspective into you. What are you like in a classroom environment, especially from the perspective of a teacher who, according to this whole process, should actually like you? What do they think about your academic credentials, your ability to be a leader, your personality? What is their insight on this? A good recommendation letter both indicates your strong personal skills, especially with working with people like a teacher, which could one day translate to working with a manager, for instance. The dynamic is pretty similar, and your general academic potential, how well you're able to flourish in college. Whether you know it or not, this next part of the video is absolutely the part that you're here from. There's not really a modest way to say this. My high school teachers absolutely love me, and it's not because of some weird social engineering tactic where I'm manipulating them into finessing a rec letter. That's not what this is. It's because they genuinely like and care about me. It's a relationship that I've fostered over the years, and I look at my teachers like they're my friends, or at least as close as they can be given the dynamic. The first thing you have to understand about your teachers is that they are regular people. They have lives, they went to college, and this is the profession they ended up choosing. If you want anyone to like you, a big part of it comes down to giving people validation. Now, it's not some secret that the life of a high school teacher, for instance, is somewhat unfulfilling. It's really hard, it's a lot of work, and especially let's just think about this for a second and be empathetic to their situation. You are teaching a classroom full of adolescent kids who would pretty much rather do anything than be there in that moment. Now there's a huge spectrum, right? We have the low-end kids who, best case scenario, they pass and they don't distract anyone else. And then you have the high-end kids who do some homework, some assignment, they hardly pay attention in class, turn it in, and if they get anything less than an A, then they create this huge stink and start sending you emails. While this might not be every single high school kid, it is the majority. I want you to look at me. Look at me. If you want your teacher to not just like you, but literally remember you for the rest of their career, this is exactly what you're going to do. Absolutely everything starts with your performance in class. If you're not getting A's in the classes that you want to be asking your teachers for rec letters in, then they can't even speak on the easiest quality to talk about, which is your intelligence. That rare story where a student goes from a C to an A by just grinding it out, and that makes for this beautiful rec letter, that's the type of stuff that only happens in movies, okay? The real way you show your work ethic and determination is by getting A's in a class consistently throughout the semester. When it comes to rec letters, you want to have certain teachers in mind early on in high school. The more teachers you can build connections with, the better, but practically there's only so much you can do. Now, from a college admissions perspective, the best teachers to be interacting with for rec letters are going to be your junior year teachers. You just had them when you're entering senior year, so it's very easy to ask them for recommendation letters, and they also will probably know you the best. Like, you're at the peak of your academic career at this point. However, throughout high school, there is a very good likelihood that if you're a competitive student, you're going to need rec letters for other things, whether it's an internship, whether it's some kind of competition, and because of that, you want to enter each school year with about 2 to 3 teachers in mind that you can ask for rec letters. Don't make any judgments before you enter like the next year of teaching, but what you're going to do is within the first month of school, try to gauge which teachers you feel like you have a natural connection with. The teachers that you think it would be easiest or best to ask them for a rec letter in the future. And also just make sure that one of those teachers is in a field that you're interested in, like science for instance. Freshman year doesn't really matter that much, but mainly it's your chance to practice, because once you get to sophomore year, things start to matter a little bit more. Now that you're in sophomore year, there's a chance that either one, you'll have the same teacher in junior year, which means if you get 2 years to work with your teacher, double the time to prove yourself, to build up that relationship, that is a fantastic choice for a rec letter. Or in sophomore year, there might be a chance that you either have like a club advisor or adult that's working in a club act as your teacher as well. And so if you have those like double connections, that's fantastic, and you definitely don't want to fumble the bag. The core of building fantastic relationships with teachers is respect, both ways. Now, if you have even basic social skills, it should be pretty easy to interact with a teacher. You know how to respect them, but how do you get them to respect you as a student? There are a couple ways, and we're going to start with easiest with the lowest rewards and get to the hardest with the highest rewards. We mentioned grades being important earlier, but let's face it, a lot of students get A's. So what you really want to do in a classroom environment is not just excel academically, but it's to stand out. You do this by purposely putting significantly extra work into certain assignments that are meant to garner attention. Like, for example, let's say your English teacher assigns you a certain project where you have to write like a poem, and you just put a ton of time into it and you write like Homer's next Iliad piece and you turn that in. Of course, your teacher's going to take a little bit of an extra look when they see it. Another example would be like in science class where you have a particular lab report you're working on and you take a little bit extra time to dig much deeper into some of the background information, to write a really good conclusion and show your teacher that you were genuinely curious about the topic and you went that extra mile. If you work on an assignment with intention like that, from my experience, there's about a 70% chance that your teacher will notice it and then give you some kind of extra compliment for it. That's like beyond the regular compliments they always be handing out in class. Now, here's my special tip. The assignments that you want to go like above and beyond are going to be the assignments that are actually not graded. The reason for this being, the majority of your classmates, as soon as they hear that an assignment is not graded, they're just gonna tune out. Like, they really don't care about how well they do it, if they even decide to do it. But you, on the other hand, you're a responsible young adult and you're also fiending for that rec letter. So you're gonna go ahead and you're gonna grind on these assignments and hopefully have your teacher take special notice to it and, earn your way through the rankings. Other good assignments to try to stand out on include like big projects and like presentations that you have to do, especially those that your teacher really cares about, because those are the ones that are going to gain the most attention. There have been instances where I also put in a ton of work and it just didn't get noticed, but at the end of the day, one, these are usually on like the ungraded assignments, so they probably just didn't see it, as opposed to them just seeing it and not saying anything. But mainly, the point here is that you can't get rewards without ever taking a risk. All of this that you're doing here is some level of social risk where you're putting in your time, and the goal is that you get the rewards. And statistically speaking, like, you will get the rewards if you do the right amount of effort and you put it in and you legitimately take the risk enough times. Next, there's a certain personality that is just more likable, especially for teachers. I know that you probably see some of the more like over-the-top personalities in school, and I'll be honest, some of them actually do work. Like, you know that one student who's always talking to the teacher and making corny jokes, and like just seeing them do that just pisses you off? I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, your teacher likes that student more than they like you. And the reason that you hate them so much, the reason it pisses you off, is because intrinsically you know that. I used to see people win socially like this and just get like all defensive and insecure, like, oh, you know, but I'm cooler, the things that I'm doing are better. I'm telling you, the day that I stopped being a loser was the day that I set aside my prejudice and I just watched these students work in action. What were the types of things that they were saying, what worked, what didn't work? I started learning from what they did, and that made me more personable. But here's the deal though, regardless of how much you learn from other people and implement these social skills, not every teacher is going to like you. And on the flip side of this, you don't need the validation of every teacher. This is why we focus on just 2 to 3 teachers a year, because it's sufficient to meet our needs and it also gives enough redundancy. Standing out academically is the foundation to a great relationship, but your social skills, the way that you respond to praise, your ability to just keep impressing teachers in that academic classroom environment, that's what's going to translate to a good rec letter. While you're doing the previous steps, you also want to stand out as a student during class personality-wise. Let's be honest here for a second. When you turn in an assignment in school, it's not name blind. Your teacher literally knows it's you when they see your test or your homework because it's right there, unlike some college admissions officer. If they like you, you will get better grades. If you get better grades, they will like you more. What we're doing here is creating a positive feedback loop, where the more you feed into it, the better student you appear to be. The logical question from here is how? How do you stand out in the classroom? These are my immediately applicable techniques. The next time you're in school, in the middle of lecture, I want you to just take a look around. Look at the other students. Half of the class is immediately just completely zoned out. They have no clue what's going on. In the other half, there's like a handful of kids taking notes, another handful doing something on their laptops, and then a few kids who actually care. It is a rare commodity to be a student that actually pays attention and cares. Whenever your teacher is going over a key point in class or they're giving directions, nod your head. I used to do this so consistently as a way to show that I was locked in during school that my teachers actually knew me for it. I used to do this so consistently that at the end of my freshman year, literally my English teacher and my physics teacher both like shouted me out in front of the class about doing this and like how much they appreciated it. And the fact that they were gonna kind of miss me as a student because they wouldn't have someone like that in the future. The best way to ever learn how to like implement social techniques is to see how other people do it in one environment and then just use it in your own. This is not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel here. Just copy exactly what I did in your classroom setting and you can get the exact same praise. Next, you're going to ask questions, but never BS questions or irritating questions, okay? BS questions are basically things that are just unrelated to what you're learning about. If you have some kind of natural curiosity, that's fine, but always ask those in a one-on-one environment after class. Irritating questions are things that are somewhat like provocative or they just annoy the teacher. You know the type of kids that ask questions that are just kind of meant to disrupt lecture or kind of accuse the teacher of something. Don't be one of those kids. The questions you want to ask are clarifying questions or things related to like project details. Usually these questions are like an easy alley-oop for the teacher, so it's not like it takes much effort from them and then they just get to know you better from it. In addition to this, about once every 1 to 2 weeks, you're going to ask your teacher some kind of question in a one-on-one setting. I'm telling you, it literally doesn't matter what you ask or what you even talk about. The idea here is that you say something that kind of sparks a little bit of conversation, and then you go on to talk to your teacher for, 1 to 2 minutes. After that, you dip. It's kind of annoying as a student to also take up too much of their time, and that's not the point here. You just want to plant these seeds that will build a deeper connection over time. Doing everything we are talking about will get you to about a 6 to 7 out of 10 rec letter. But there's a couple more things that we can do to stand out even further, and we're going to talk about them now. First, if you're in class with a teacher who is a club advisor for you, or you work with them in some way outside of school, you have to prioritize these relationships. Those out of the classroom experiences that you share with a teacher are some of the best ways that you can actually express your personal qualities. There's only so much like non-academic related traits that you can actually demonstrate inside the classroom, right? Things like leadership become kind of difficult if there's no opportunities for it, like in a math class, for instance. However, if you play a sport, maybe you do something like track and field and you're the team captain, or you run a science bowl club and you're the president, these are much better opportunities in order to show those characteristics. Same goes for teachers that you have for multiple years. I don't care if it's 2 years in a row, or you had them freshman year and you have them again in junior year. You are already in their books as a student that they know, and if you did everything we talked about, they already like you. Bro, they're just primed for you to go and riz them up, okay? Just go do it. The third strategy in this trifecta is one that everyone can use. You want to be the go-to person that your teacher can count on in your class. When your teacher asks for someone to pass out papers or to get them a printout, you have to be the first person that's raising your hand to volunteer. Even if it feels corny, even if your friends are making fun of you for it, the reason that it even feels that way is because those other people are just projecting their insecurities onto you because they don't know how to build relationships with teachers and adults, and none of their teachers care about them. The reason you do all of this is to build that level of reliability in a classroom setting. The more dependable you are for a teacher, the more access to opportunities they will give you when it comes to actually showing yourself as a leader in a classroom setting or doing things that would be really, really cool for them to include in a rec letter. A lot of times they'll ask you to lead a group discussion or be a leader for some kind of project. These things are the exact details that you want to go in your rec letter. These are the details that are missing in the kids that have the bad rec letters and that absolutely show out like in multiple different ways for the kids who have the phenomenal rec letters. On top of that, you're also going to step out of your comfort zone and volunteer all the time. My personal motto is don't think. Just say yes and then figure it out after you get called on, okay? You're gonna raise your hand to answer questions all the time. If your teacher asks for someone to share their project as a volunteer, for someone to go first and just present, always be the person to raise your hand and take that sacrifice for your classmates because they will view you so much more positively for it. You don't have to raise your hand every single time your teacher asks a question to the class or someone to come like solve a problem on the board, but be smart about it. If you're one of the first people to do it at the beginning of lecture or like time-wise at the beginning of the school year very consistently, when things are easy, you're getting all of like the good marks in their books. But then once the class gets a lot harder and like say there's a question you actually don't know the answer to, now that you've done it so often, your teacher's not just gonna like randomly call on you and like embarrass you in front of the class if you don't know it, because in their eyes, you've already like done your part. Let some other students do it when you don't know it. However, if no one in the class is raising their hand, then again, this is a great time for you to be that person that steps up. It just comes down to being dependable. Our final strategy in this video is one that I've straight up never heard on the internet. At the start of this video, we talked about getting your teacher to respect you, having that two-way respect. This is by far the best way to do that. And if you can get to this level, the likelihood that you get good rec letters just increases tenfold, 100-fold. The tricky part here is that it actually has nothing to do with what you do inside of the classroom. When you're building a fantastic college application, you have to work on extracurriculars, whether that's a science fair project or a nonprofit or some kind of community service work. You're going to take whatever activity it is that you're doing and build it to a really, really high level, to the point where you're able to get some kind of recognition by local news. I mentioned activities like nonprofits, for instance, because they're just so good at being able to garner that kind of attention, especially if you're working on a project that you're personally invested in and you have a cool story to go with it. If some kind of local news group sees the work that you're doing and they write an article about it, chances are either your school or your school district board is gonna see that and then repost it as a way to say, look, our students are doing this super cool thing, support them for it. From that chain reaction, your teachers are gonna see this all over Facebook or the news or whatever it may be, and they're going to love you for it. You are their student going out there in the real world and doing some really cool stuff. When you show up to class after doing something like that, chances are they will probably come up to you and then ask you some questions. And then I have a super charismatic tip here for you. When you're talking to your teachers about something like this is your opportunity to thank them for everything that they've done to support you. Even if it's as small as just extending some deadlines or allowing you to miss class a day or two to accommodate for some of the work that you were doing. Or if it's just you can't come up with anything, just as simple as them being positive in class and a motivating force in your life, tell them that. Tell them how much they mean to you and be very genuine in the way that you do it and the examples that you use. They will remember you as a student for years to come. Because now, in the eyes of this adult mentor in your life, they've helped guide you down a really, really positive path to where you're actually going out there in the world, doing some super cool work, and you're thankful to them for helping you get there. This is exactly how you elevate yourself to the next level. It's by learning how to give people compliments and thank yous that actually stick with them. Let's say you don't do any of this new stuff. At the end of the school year, a lot of people on their last day of class, they'll just give a little thank you to their teacher and then dip and never see them again. Don't be that student, right? Take a couple minutes to stay behind, wait till other people are gone, and then go up to your teacher and just talk to them one-on-one about this academic year. Tell them how much maybe their style of instruction or the way that they structure their class or how engaging they were as a lecturer stood out to you and how you were able to learn better because of them. They will appreciate you so much more for it. Real charisma is not using deceptive techniques to manipulate others. It's having a strong understanding of human psychology and using your genuine emotions about other people and expressing them in a way that comes across as very positive and meaningful. This is a skill that takes time to get better, but the good news here is that you have a handful of years in high school in order to build on those skills and perfect them. That's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Peace.